Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today's webinar is Navigating the New Teen Workforce with Your Native Business, presented by Russ Siegel. Today's webinar is being recorded. My name is Alyssa Atkins, and I am the Training and Development Coordinator for the Native Learning Center, and today I will be your webinar facilitator. Please follow along as I read the disclaimer aloud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. Also displayed here is our copyright infringement law. This is just a friendly reminder that the webinar presentation materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. Now, if you look at the top of your screen, you should see a hand. With that hand, you can raise hand, agree, disagree, show applause, show laughter, or even signal a request like asking an instructor to speak louder or slow down, please. Now your screen should look similar to this graphic here. To the bottom left, you will see a pod that says Files. Here we'll find any handouts or appendix items included in today's presentation. Please feel free to download a copy for yourself. Just hover over the item you want to download with your mouse, then click the arrow pointing downwards to download and save onto your device. Once the item is downloaded, it should appear in your device's download section. The second pod to the right, labeled Web Links, is where you find our survey about today's webinar, along with the link to receive our weekly newsletter. Connect with the Native Learning Center on LinkedIn, and any other links that will be seen throughout today's presentation. Finally, to the right of the screen, we have a chat pod available. This is how you'll communicate with instructor and NOC staff. If you have any questions during the presentation, we welcome you to send them in by using the chat box. Simply type your message into the space and that says type here, and hit enter or click that up arrow icon button and submit. We do encourage class participation, so please feel free to write in those questions or comments. Tech support issues should also be submitted here. Know that most can be solved by leaving and rejoining the meeting room. Let's all get the chat box going together now by typing in your name, where you're joining us from, your tribal affiliation, and your work or role in Indian country. Also, an important note, if anyone is viewing today's webinar as a group, maybe sitting with their colleague or a friend, please make sure to email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat right now. I'm going to email we need accurate registration data for our records. And with it, we can also make sure we are able to send a completion certificate with everyone attending today. So we just want to make sure that we capture everyone in the group. If you're sharing a screen, please make sure you email me so I can make sure I capture you so we can email you a certificate. And with that being said, I now introduce Russ Siegel.
Thank you, and welcome everyone, whether it's afternoon, morning, or another part of the day, wherever you are. Want to welcome you and look forward to spending about the next hour and a half with you today as we talk about hiring and employing teenagers. This is something that I don't think is addressed nearly enough among employers. And so I want to make sure that we get a few assumptions out of the way right up front. Just want to make sure that everybody here, I'm gonna assume that you are either going to hire teenagers, you hire teenagers, or you're thinking about hiring teenagers. Otherwise, hopefully there's something here that you can get out of today's webinar that you can take to someone who is in that situation. Very likely you were a teenage employee at some point, whether you were bagging groceries, babysitting, walking dogs, parking cars, whatever it is that you were doing as a teenager. You might have been working at a hot dog stand or at a movie theater. So there's all kinds of jobs that we considered a long time ago, back in the day, jobs for kids, teenagers, high school jobs. That were pretty common, fast food being one of those. And what I'm going to ask you to do is jump into the chat real quickly. If you're comfortable telling me the year that you were born, you can do that. If you're not, I'm going to go ahead and put some different generations in here. And just if you're not comfortable telling me your exact age, which I'm not going to force you to do, tell me what generation you consider yourself in. Now, there's a little bit of controversy here in the early 1980s. We have a lot of folks who grew up in the 80s. Maybe they were a younger sibling. Maybe they were born in 80, 81. They had some Gen X older brother or sister. But they still, because of when they grew up and the way they grew up, thought of themselves not as millennials, but as Gen X. And then, so in this little gray area here, we started to see the term Xennials pop up. And Xennials was just a word for people who considered themselves Gen X, but weren't officially Generation X. Okay, so we've got a Gen Xer, we've got a millennial. I too am a Gen Xer, as you might be able to tell from some of the lines around the eyes and the gray in the beard. I've been doing this for over 25 years. I have worked with a lot of companies to hire a lot of people of all ages, actually. And for this particular topic, I got in the Wayback Machine. I went back in time to when I was first entering the workforce. And I remembered one of my first jobs. I was selling shoes in high school for Kenny Shoes. My work experience goes back a lot farther than that. And I'll tell you about that in just a second. But the first boss I ever had, his name was David. And David was in his 30s, but he treated me like I was an adult. He was the first person who ever really saw me in the workplace as if I were an adult. He talked to me like I was a grown-up. He expected things of me as if I had been doing this a long time. And he set the bar pretty high. He set a lot of high expectations. And the funny thing about humans is that humans will live up to or down to whatever expectations we're given. And so David had high expectations for me. And turns out I was on a commission. So the more shoes I sold, the more money I made. And I was making a lot of money for a high school student back in the day compared to some of my friends who were working in fast food or maybe working at the movie theater or the putt-putt course or things like that. And so he capitalized on that competitiveness. He wanted to compete with me, and he wanted me to compete with other people to see how many shoes we could sell, who could sell the most, and we set up these contests. So he really kind of hit my hot button as I was learning how to work, as I was learning the basics of things like, how to dress for success, show up on time. I had to wear a tie to work every day when I was in high school. And it's kind of a world we don't live in these days. But let's start by talking about some of the changes over the decades. How has the world changed since I first went into the workforce, and maybe since you went into the workforce? What are kids today facing? And what do they look like? What do they expect? What do they hope for? What are their ambitions? What are their expectations? What do they bring to the table? What kind of skills does a high school student bring to our organization? What are the benefits of hiring younger people? And it's not just that they're cheaper. In Australia, there is actually a bifurcated minimum wage system. They have what they call a learning wage. So the minimum wage for a high school student or someone who is just entering the workforce is about half of that. Their minimum wage is for a more experienced employee. So there are a lot of advantages to hiring a lesser experienced employee because they are a little bit cheaper. And we don't have that bifurcated minimum wage system here in this country, but we do have what's called an effective wage. And if a more experienced person is going to make a lot more money, we might be willing to take a chance on a newbie, a high school student who doesn't have any experience. And then we bring them up in the organization and we teach them our ways, and we show them how things can be done, and we try to teach them the right way. We're going to cover some challenges and misconceptions because there are some things that are widely believed out there about teenage workers, pre-college employees, pre-college level employees that are wrong, that could actually come back to bite us if we're not aware of them. We'll talk about how to add teenagers to our lineup, how to go about that, how to make our organization attractive to really good 15 employees. Now, there are some companies that do a great job of that. Chick-fil-A, I think, does a wonderful job hiring young people. If you walk into a Chick-fil-A, you're going to see a group of high school students who are respectful. They're quick on their feet. They own their job. They work hard, and that's just part of that corporate culture that they learn. And with Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A is just one example. I mean, 1 in 7 people in the workforce today started out with McDonald's. So love it or hate it, McDonald's has done a great job being one of those training grounds for America's workforce. We'll talk about how to help those young people move from their first job to their next job, because the reality is, in the vast majority of cases, their first job will not be their last job. Yes, there are going to be a few outliers who just love what they do in high school. They're going to work their way up and they're going to end up retiring. I've got a friend who started working in a brand new hardware store when we were in high school. One of his neighbors opened up a hardware store in town. It became kind of the feed and seed store, and they sold farm equipment, farm implements. They just expanded to do a lot of different things. And Steve, who was one of the smartest people I ever knew, everybody thought Steve's going to go to Harvard. Steve's going to go to Yale. He's a brilliant math whiz. And Steve ended up not going to college at all. And just last year, he retired from this company that he had been working with since 1986. So, things like that happen. I'm not going to deny that, but the vast majority of people we run into, their first job is not going to be their last job. What do they need from us? As the boss, there are a lot of roles that we fill. One of those roles is just going to be life coach, teacher. There are things that kids are not going to get at home. They're going to learn money lessons from you. They're going to learn productivity lessons from you, time management lessons from you. They're going to learn things about the world of work that they're not going to get at home, and they're certainly not going to get at school. They're going to learn some shortcuts in life, some things that they can do. And I'm not saying that in a disparaging way. We all take shortcuts. There are a lot of great shortcuts that we take to get things done. And they're going to learn some of those from you. So what is it that they need beyond just someone who's going to hold their feet to the fire, make them get to work on time, etc.? And we're going to talk about how to create a path of professional growth for these young people. And one of the reasons we want to do that is if you want to hire the best people, and I spoke about this last week in another webinar on hiring. If we're going to hire the best people, we want to gain a reputation for producing the best people, getting the best out of the best people. We want to set up this pattern of hiring good people, training them to be better, helping them be their best, and then those people say nice things about us, word gets out, and all of a sudden we wake up one day and we are an employer of choice. And that's my term. I use that because if you're an employer of choice, you are the place with this gravitational pull, and people want to work for you. So you're not going to have to stand out on the corner with a bullhorn screaming for people to please come in and apply. You're going to have great applicants coming to you if you build that reputation. So let's talk about the decades. Before we can understand today's teenagers, and you may have teenagers, what you don't have, though, is teenage workers. The teenager you have at home, I know that the teenager I had at home was very different from the teenager who showed up at work. I was probably different from the kid who slept in my mom and dad's house versus the person who showed up at my employer every day. We have this work hat that we put on, and you probably could admit to that as well, that you were not the same at home as you were at work. You may have acted a little differently. You may have carried yourself a little bit differently. But if we're going to understand the teenagers today that are coming into the workplace, we need to have a little better understanding of ourselves. Now, we have a good mix here. I'm a Gen Xer. We've got another Gen Xer and a millennial in the audience. Let's go back a little bit farther than that. And let's talk about our parents and our grandparents. We had these people who worked hard all their lives to make a better life for the next generation. We had people who fought in World War II and were very patriotic. They were shaped by that. the silent generation, the greatest generation, those people who just did what had to be done. I got an opportunity to tour the Greenbrier bunker a couple of weeks ago, and if you don't know anything about the Greenbrier bunker, check that out. Google that one. Here was a multi-million-dollar bunker that was built to house Congress in the event of a nuclear attack, and nobody knew about it. Well, not exactly nobody, because almost everybody in the Greenbrier Valley in West Virginia knew about it, but they didn't say anything about it because they realized it was the Cold War, it was important, and they just did what had to be done. It was a terribly stressful time. People were facing, nuclear attack by the Russians at any moment, and duck and cover. But it was also a generation of people who just did what had to be done. They kept their mouths closed about it, and they didn't talk about this huge building project that didn't get exposed until 1992 in a news article by the Washington Post. Now, why do I say that? Well, today we live out loud. Everybody lives out in public. We have kids now who live on Instagram and TikTok. And they do things specifically to get likes. They do dangerous things specifically to get likes. And well, their great grandparents did dangerous things not to get likes and follows and shares. They did dangerous things because they had to put bread on the table. We had a group of people who were influenced by Pearl Harbor, by rationing. We had a group of people who came up, the baby boomers, who were influenced by the Cold War. They were influenced by the Beatles. They were the first people to really be exposed to rock and roll, the civil rights movement. And then we had our generation, those of us born in 68. We had video games. I remember when I first played Pong, I thought I had walked into this magical land. I thought that there was just never going to be anything greater than Pong, the video game. This is just the best. I'm still fascinated by it. But hey, I'm still fascinated by a fax machine, how you put one piece of paper in a machine and another piece of paper with the same stuff on it gets spit out somewhere else in the world. It's just amazing. Our generation was also influenced by things like the Persian Gulf War. We had a generation back during World War II that they were frugal. They saved their money. They didn't waste anything. And that showed. And the baby boom generation that came along after that, they decided we're not going to want for anything. We're tired of rationing. We're tired of saving and scrimping. We're going to be a little more opulent. We're going to buy some things. We're going to buy that RV. We're going to install that pool. We're going to take that vacation. My kids can drink the store brand soda, but I'm drinking Coke or I'm drinking Pepsi. I'm going to drink the real stuff. We had another group, the Gen Xers, who came up as children of the baby boomers, and some of us were children of those greatest generation folks, and we were just taught to put our heads down and work hard, just work hard. And we, as a group, we developed this isolation. We were the latchkey kids. We were the kids who spent all of our time at home in the afternoons before mom and dad got home. They were working. And we decided that we wanted to reject authority. We're going to do our own thing. If mom and dad are going to leave us to our own devices in the afternoons, we're going to stay out. I think they call this also the street light generation. Our generation was the ones who stayed out until the street lights came on. Well, I got news for you. I didn't have street lights in my neighborhood. I stayed out until dad walked out in the yard and whistled, and we could hear him from miles away. And that was our signal to get home. But we started to reject authority, but then we had kids. The millennials started to see that, wow, I'm a little bit jaded here because my grandparents and my parents have all this stuff, but I'm having to work harder and harder for everything I'm getting. And they're not gonna, my baby boom parents or my my retiree parents, they're not going to have anything left for me. I'm on my own. And then we have these, what we call Generation Z. And now I'm going to use Generation Z a little bit in a generic term. Gen Z is going to be my go-to term for this discussion today. But we have to also realize that between 2010 and today, we've got this Generation Alpha that's just turning 14. In a year or two, they're going to be ready to walk into the workplace. In some cases, they already are. At age 14, those early Gen Alpha kids, they're going to start approaching us looking for a job. So what was their big influence? If my big influence in my life were things like the Cold War, the Reagan presidency, maybe the Gulf War. I had friends who fought in Grenada. A lot of people don't remember Grenada, but today we've got a group of kids who are entering the workforce, and one of the biggest influences in their life was this thing called COVID-19. And COVID-19 forced them to wear masks everywhere, even in basketball games, forced them to stay home and be isolated from their friends and family. It forced them to change the way they got schoolwork done. It forced them to change the way they were used to ordering food and going to restaurants and having a life, this life that was just beginning to start as high schoolers, where they started to explore some freedom. Where they got into middle school, or maybe even the younger ones, where they just learned how to ride a bike. Do you remember what kind of freedom you experienced when you learned how to ride a bike? I mean, the world was your oyster, right? And you had this ability to go almost anywhere, or at least we thought, but not these kids. You learn how to ride a bike, you got to stay home because of COVID. It changed everything, and it has had a profound effect on their way of thinking. But let's take another look at some different things that have changed over the years. Let's take a look at some economic indicators. Since my generation entered the workforce, the average price of a home has gone up by 400%. So we have kids who are starting in the workforce today, and what do they want? They want what mom and dad have. I think we all at some level wanted that, but there are generations that realize, I've got to work for this. I've got to earn my bones. I've got to work hard, save my money. I can afford this when I get there. Now it seems like, and this is probably the old geezer in me talking, but it seems like we have kids who just think that they're deserving of what mom and dad have earned all their lives. I want this $400,000 house now. I want this $1 million home now. And it's not a reality. But groceries have gone up by 300% since I started in the workforce. 25 years ago, people spent an average of $30 a week dining out. Today, to eat the same thing, they're spending $50 or $100. Depends on if you're eating fast food or if you're eating a dine-in restaurant. Total eating out 25 years ago, people spent $80 a week. Today, they're spending $150 a week just to eat out. Car ownership has gone through the roof, especially in the last couple of years post-COVID because of some supply chain issues. It ain't bragging when I say that the last vehicle my wife bought, I say it's my wife's because I get to ride in it occasionally, was $6,000 less than the first house we purchased, which floored me. That took some getting used to. But 35 years ago, the unemployment rate was 5.3%. 25 years ago, it was 4.2%. Today, it's only 3.2%. So we have more kids coming out of school looking to go into the workforce, and we have a lower unemployment rate. Once you get down below about 5%, it's generally considered full employment. So everybody, in other words, everybody who wants to work is working. Yet we have tons of jobs still available, unfilled. And one of the ways that we're going to have to do that is we're going to have to look to teenage employees. Teenagers who are buying a set of tires for that car that they were either given or they've bought or they're paying for, that set of tires that might have cost my generation $150 and it's costing their generation $600. When I started working, minimum wage was $3.35 an hour. And I remember the day I got a raise to $4 an hour. I went home and I said, Mom, I'm making $4 an hour. I am making $1 every 15 minutes. I thought I had made it. It was never going to get any better than that. When you can make $1 every 15 minutes, wow. I mean, to this day, I have never received a raise that made me feel the way that 65-cent an hour raise made me feel. But today, the minimum wage really hasn't gone up. Now, we do have what's called a prevailing wage. So if I'm offering the minimum wage of $7.25 an hour, but my competitor across the street is paying $15 an hour, the real minimum wage is $15 an hour. It's not the federal minimum wage. It's what the lowest amount of money that people are paying to get a good employee. That's the effective minimum wage. So if he's paying $15 an hour and the guy down the street who does the same type of business is paying $16 an hour, guess who's going to get the better candidates? It's not going to be me, because I'm stuck in that I got to pay minimum wage mindset. And that is just not going to happen. We've had a lot of things happen with the economy since those of us who are older went into the workforce. But we've also had a lot of technology changes. I did see a meme a couple of weeks ago that I wish I had copied it so that I could have pasted it into this presentation. But basically, it was just a typewriter. And it was my generation thanking their school for teaching them a skill that would have helped them get a job in 1942. Now, I took typing in the 9th grade, and it was a skill that I still use. I'm happy that I took typing. But we don't have typing pools anymore. We don't have steno pools anymore. Our kids, our grandkids, will be able to talk to their computers, or if Elon Musk has his way, they'll just be able to have a chip implanted. They'll be able to think it, and it will be printed out or transmitted. There won't be any more typing. So technology has changed. The technology that gathers people's attention, that really hooks them, has changed. In my day, it was a good movie or it was a good TV show, and you had to hurry if you wanted to run to the bathroom and get something to eat during a commercial break because you might miss something. Nowadays, nobody misses anything. One of our younger employees admitted yesterday that she watched an entire Netflix series on TikTok on her phone. So think about that for a second. I'm just going to let that sink in. She watched an entire Netflix series on TikTok on her phone. Okay, that's technology changing that I'm just not sure I can get behind, but that is where we live. She's 21 years old, and that is the reality, that the people who are just a few years younger than her are, that's how they're entertained. That's what they enjoy. Society has changed. The way we dine out, the way we are entertained, the way we eat, the way we spend time with friends, all of these things have changed. And if we're not aware of that, and if we're still in our old mindset of this is the way things were done when I was your age, that is a losing mindset, because you're going to lose good people. You're going to lose great opportunities to have people develop under you and under your watch who could really improve your organization. And not just your organization, but your tribe as well. If they come in and they work for you and they go to college and they want to come out and they want to get a tribal job, maybe they're working in tribal finance or the legal aid department or in healthcare. The skills that they learn under you, if you play your cards right and you do the right things, they're going to have a profound impact on your tribe and for future generations. But if we're just going to be stuck in this, hey, this is not the way I did it when I was a kid, this is the way I was treated, so this is the way I'm going to treat people, that can backfire in a major way. So I would just encourage you, let's decide now that we're going to put on a new attitude where young employees are concerned, because this ain't the same world where we started our work journey. What does the new teen worker look like? Well, what are they looking for? Teens today, and I know that the notion is teens are lazy, teens are this, teens are that, they're entitled, yada yada yada. Well, let's back up a second, because the data shows something entirely different. Teenagers today are looking for purpose. This is a generation that has been told all their life that they are meant for great things, that they will do great things, that they will turn the world around, and that they are the ones who are going to change the world. So whether they're flipping burgers or painting houses, or whatever it is that they're doing, sweeping floors, bagging groceries, they are looking for purpose. That's what they crave. They have values. What kind of values do they have? Well, let's think about this. This generation, the youngest generation right now that's entering the workforce, has spent a lot of time with their grandparents. Those baby boomers who realized that, wow, I used to lock my kid out of the house and didn't let them come home till dinner, or they had to fend for themselves at work while I was at work. These were my latchkey kids. Maybe that wasn't the best way to raise my kids. So I'm going to help make sure my grandkids don't have to go through life that way. So what we have is a group of older grandparents who are working hard to establish relationships with their grandchildren. And it's having an effect. It rubs off. They may not be listening to their parents, but trust me, these kids listen to their grandparents. They're soaking it all in, and it is making a difference. So they have a set of values that is more closely aligned with that of their grandparents than of their parents. More closely aligned and more developed by their grandparents than by their friend group. So they're looking for an alignment of values. Yes, and Jeff, you're right. COVID pushed, when you don't have any other way to take care of your kid, grandma and grandpa are there. When you still got to go out and work and the kids can't go to school, yes, it absolutely pushed those relationships. And I don't want to look at COVID as this doom and gloom thing, because I think there were a lot of good things that came out of it. I think there were a lot of good changes that came out of it. Maybe a lot of needed changes came out of it. But these kids now, when they go to work, they're looking for a workplace that aligns with their values. If grandmother used to fuss at them for throwing away their drink can or something, hey, you need to recycle. They're going to start to look for businesses that are a little greener, that are a little more sustainable. They're going to look for businesses that have a bigger purpose, that go beyond just sending out food and taking in money. Kids today are looking for creative opportunity. They want to be creative. I mean, look, things changed for me years ago. We did, for many years, we did a youth entrepreneurship camp. Every summer, it was a week-long camp for kids aged 10 to 13. And the first few years we did it, we had kids who were raising chickens, kids who wanted to bead, kids who wanted to make leather purses and wallets, and we had kids who wanted to do basketry. We had a lot of kids who were interested in native Cherokee craft as a way to make money, because that's who they were with. They were with their grandmother, who was teaching them how to bead and how to crochet and how to quilt. And all of a sudden, we have a group one summer, and they want to start reprogramming Minecraft modifications. They want to start doing YouTube influencer. That's their job. That's what they want to do. They want to become an Instagram influencer or a social media star. These were things that I had just never considered. But think about it. If 100 years ago you had told a railroad worker or a coal miner or a farmer or an orderly in a hospital or an auto mechanic, anybody, that the most valuable companies today wouldn't make anything. Well, okay, Apple makes some things. But if you look at what are called the Magnificent Seven, it includes Microsoft, NVIDIA, it includes Apple, includes a lot of businesses that are just in the information industry. Apple, Google is one of them. Of course, it's Alphabet now is the parent company, Alphabet. But if you start looking at the Magnificent Seven, if you had told these companies, these people, hey, someday the biggest companies in the world are not going to be the ones that make steel, that drill for coal, that drill for oil, that build houses or build buildings. They're going to be companies that trade in information. They would have laughed, or they would have thought that you had, grown horns or something. There's no way they would have believed you. But kids today want to use what they know about technology to be creative. They're also looking for personal growth. They don't want to just come in and make money. They want to learn skills. They want to learn something that's going to make them a better person. It's going to make them a better employee. It's going to make them a better whatever it is that they want to be someday. They want to make meaningful contributions to society because they've been told that they can and that they will, that they are the generation who will do that. And they want to be challenged. Kids today don't want to just have everything handed to them, contrary to popular belief. They want to be challenged. They're looking for inclusion. They want to be part of the conversation. So if you're going to hire them, plan on including them in meetings. Bring them in on the decisions that you're making. Let them be a part of that. They want to collaborate. And they don't want to just collaborate with people their age. Young people today want to be heard. They want to be respected. And they're going to do what it takes to be heard and respected by older generations. They long for that. They crave to be respected and heard by older generations because they see people who are older than them as potential mentors. Because in schools, they've been told that mentorship is important. Yes, Annette, thank you for that. She says, my 20-year-old cousin who lives with me is searching for a job that connects her to her tribe and gives her purpose in the community. Absolutely. And look, Sequoia Fund is in the finance business. We lend money, but we can't just be, banking light. We can't just be an organization that hands out money. We are deeply ingrained in cultural projects. We're in the middle of one right now, actually two. One is focused on a particular time of the year, but another is an ongoing project where we're going to help businesses learn Cherokee, help them learn and proliferate that language. So we're going to get businesses involved in helping grow the Cherokee language and the use of the Cherokee language. And our employees, if we were just here handing out money, I don't think anybody would want to be here. So you're absolutely right. And it goes on down the age range. It is those younger kids too who want to be part of that. They recognize the value and the importance of learning from people who came before them. Thank you, grandparents, by the way. People who've made it important to learn from your elders. People who have said, I'm worth listening to because I've got this wisdom that you don't have. Maybe they're not saying that, but they're certainly modeling that. And I think kids today, more than any generation before them, are starting to understand that there is this thing called knowledge that is great to have, but it's not enough. And just like 3 or 4 generations prior to them, they're starting to understand the value of wisdom, which is something that they've got to get that over time. But what do they bring to the table? Well, they are innovative. They're adaptable. They can change on a dime. Why? Because they had to learn a whole new way of doing school. They had to go from being in a classroom to being in front of a computer, sometimes 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And schools were scrambling during COVID. Schools were they were just, let's face it, a lot of this stuff they were doing, they were making up on the fly. They were trying to catch up because they were way behind where they should have been. But young people have this idea that they have solutions they can bring to the table. Let me help you think about things in a different way. Maybe I don't have the answers, but maybe I have the questions. And sometimes that's just as important. I'm constantly challenged by our younger employees. And we don't have teenagers who work here at Sequoia Fund, but and I talk to people who, they work at the golf course or they work somewhere where there are teen employees, and the story's the same. They want to kind of push the boundaries. They want people to ask questions that they've not been asking. They're like, why are you not asking that question? Why are you stuck in that old mindset? So again, the kids of today, they're not bringing the answers, but they're going to bring the questions. They have a social consciousness that they bring to the table. That is a good thing. They have a desire for, again, a cross-generational connection. They want to work with everybody. They don't want to just be siloed and say, okay, you kids go over here and work on this social media project because you're kids and you know all about that. I'm going to get to why that's not a good thing in just a moment. Younger people have an attitude of experimentation. On the consumer side, marketers have labeled this generation the trisumers. This is the Stitch Fix generation. This is the generation where if I buy it and I don't like it, I'm going to leave the tag in it. I'm going to resell it. I'm going to take this dress, or I'm going to take this pair of pants. I'm going to wear this, and if it just doesn't work out, I'm going to sell it. I'm not afraid to spend the money on it because I know I can sell it on Poshmark and get my money back. So they're willing to try things. They're willing to just throw the spaghetti against the wall and see what kind of art it looks like. They have that attitude of experimentation that sometimes gets lost on older people who, as we get older, we become more risk averse. We tend to not want to experiment. We don't want to take those chances. We don't want to make big bets. And we equate a big bet with any bet. We don't, it keeps us from betting at all. Well, younger people are saying, let's take a bet. Let's make a small bet. Let's try this one thing. Let's see if this works. If it doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. We'll move on to something else. So those trisumers who are experimenting in their personal lives, they bring that same attitude to the workplace. They also have an attitude of autonomy, that they can work alone, that they can direct their own workday, their own path, and that they can be trusted to do that. They should be looked at as a long-term investment because that's the way they see themselves. They are looking for something stable, predictable, and with a growth trajectory. They're not looking to work for you so that they can find a better job next week. I know that a lot of us believe that, but when we look at the statistics on people who started moving from job to job to job after COVID, trying to increase their pay, hey, it wasn't the teenagers. The teenagers were saying, give me some good skills, treat me as a valued part of the team, let me work here, and I'm going to give you everything I've got. Now, I said that I would mention their digital skills, and we're going to talk about that because what they bring to the table may not be exactly what you think they're bringing to the table. And this kind of goes under the topic of challenges and misconceptions. One of the misconceptions here is that because they are the digital babies or the tech babies, that they've grown up with technology all their lives, so they know about this stuff. Well, newsflash, folks, they do, but they don't know a lot about the technology that you need them to know about. The technology that they're using is on their phone. Now, I know a very nice young man who runs a car detailing business. He has a crew of about 5 or 6 people now. He's got about 3 vans that run all over and do mobile detailing. Fantastic little business. He runs the entire business on his cell phone. He uses QuickBooks. He invoices quickly. He uses Instagram to market his business. He does digital invoicing. But if you asked him to sit down and create a spreadsheet, he would be lost as last year's Easter egg. He would not know how to do that. To be able to format a Word document, probably not going to be his bag either. Because there's a level of technology that he understands better than I do, But technology in the workplace can be very different. So if you're expecting somebody to come in and have Excel skills or any really Microsoft skills, any kind of creativity skills where Photoshop or Canva or any of those other programs are designed, that they're probably not going to have those skills, because everything they do is on a smaller screen, it's on a smaller scale, and it's just a different set of skills. So what are some other challenges and misconceptions? Well, one is that a lack of experience equals a lack of value. We've talked about this. They really want to bring you value. And one of the values that they bring is that while they might have limited work experience, they have fresh perspectives. They want to bring you value with some digital literacy. They want to be able to say, hey, the reason we're not getting a lot of traffic to our Facebook site or our Instagram site or to our TikTok is this. They're going to be able to help you critique those things. But they bring a lot of enthusiasm too, and that can be very invigorating in the workplace, especially if there are a lot of older workers who are maybe a little jaded, a little burned out. They can be a shot in the arm. So that does add a lot of value. Sometimes people equate youth with poor work ethic and professionalism. Again, I'm going to tell you, the kids that I have seen, and I've got a nephew. I've got 3 nephews, and one is a millennial, and 2 of them are Gen Z. Actually, one is now a late Gen Z. But these kids, they want to impress. They want to work hard. They want to show you that you're not going to run rings around them. They're going to strive to outperform anybody in the workplace. They want to excel, and they want to bring everything they've got to the game. We do understand that there are going to be some communication challenges. If you've ever seen a young person send a text, their language is very different. The texting language, the digital language that they use, sometimes carries over to the professional language. And one of the issues that I've seen, especially in say customer interaction situations, is where somebody will say LOL or BRB for be right back. Well, your text language does not translate to the real world, so that's an area of opportunity for us to learn and to get better. They do prefer digital communication channels, but they can leverage that digital knowledge to help collaborate, share information. So the next time you need people to work from home or work remotely, that young person on your team might be the person who sets that up and helps you maximize its effectiveness. They do want to work on those interpersonal skills. From everything that I've found, everything that I've read, everyone I've talked to, and everything I've experienced, they want to get better at dealing with people on a one-on-one basis, because they were so starved for that during COVID. And this goes to the very basics. This goes to teaching people how to shake hands, how to say thank you. One of the issues that I have, and this is just to be in my bonnet, I don't recommend this hang up for everybody, but if I'm in a restaurant and somebody comes to refill my glass and I say thank you and they say no problem, that's a generational issue that just really gets under my skin. I want somebody to say, you're welcome. No, it's not a problem. You work here. This is your job. It should not be a problem for you to do that. For them, no problem is the same thing as you're welcome. And it's really not in the real world. It's one of the reasons why, and again, I'm going to go back to Chick-fil-A, the way they teach their young people. They don't say you're welcome. They say my pleasure, because they want to stand out from everybody else and say, it's actually my pleasure to do this for you, to help you as my customer. There's a misconception that young people can't handle responsibility or that they are irresponsible. Well, they're capable of taking on responsibilities and demonstrating leadership, especially if you hire students who play sports, because you're not going to be the first person to coach them. Maybe they were on a cheerleading squad, or they played Little League, or they played youth basketball. Somewhere along the line, somebody has gotten down on their level, looked them square in the eye and said, don't do that. That's wrong. We're going to do it this way. They're going to correct their fundamentals. So especially if you get somebody who's played sports, somebody who's played in a band, maybe a school band, or they've been a part of a school play or a school chorus, they've had someone who's come along before you and said, we're not going to do it that way, we're going to do it this way. So they have some experience being corrected, being coached. We just need to make sure that we're delegating tasks and responsibilities properly to these kids. We want to give them guidance. We want to give them feedback. We don't want to overload them. And the biggest mistake I see is that we sometimes either believe that they can't handle responsibility, or on the flip side, we say they're just little adults, and they can understand the world the way I present it, and they can understand what they're supposed to do, and I don't really need to give them a whole lot of direction. Nothing can be further from the truth. If you want to frustrate people, go that route. I promise you that will create some turnover. But if you delegate tasks appropriately and you empower them to take ownership of their work, it'll be a very different situation. They'll do a great job. Well, we're going to spend some time talking about how to add these teens to your lineup, how to get them on board, how to attract them, and then what to do with them once you've got them. Because these are valuable assets in your organization, and not just to your organization, but to your community at large. And we want to treat them right. You want to be the one who's responsible for making them all they can be, molding them in the right way, versus turning them into these jaded, unhappy employees who don't have a lot of skills. You become their teacher. You play just as much a role as a parent, just as much a role as their teacher, as their school coach, or their band director, anybody else. You're not just a boss. When you have teenage employees, you are so much more. So how do we target Gen Z? How do we target these younger folks? Well, we can utilize social media. TikTok, Snapchat, very good at reaching teen audiences. The issue there is that you probably should have a teen take your message and put it into these formats. Do not try this at home. Trust me. As an older guy, I have been the brunt of many jokes around the office at my attempts at social media. So I don't do it anymore. We've got a 25-year-old who handles all that for us. So your younger people can do this, but if you're going to attract them, have a younger person take what you want to put out there in the world, translate that to a platform that works for this generation, and then put it out there. And you need to share engaging content about job opportunities. You need to make this job not only look like it's going to be a lot of fun, but again, think about what they're looking for. They're not just looking for a fun job where they can hang out and make money. They're looking for a challenge. They're looking for social responsibility. They're looking for meaningful contribution. They're looking for a way to connect to a larger purpose, to older generations, to learn. Connect your job to those things that they're looking for, and that's going to be an attractant. That's going to bring people to you. One of the things that people are looking for is flexible scheduling. We're going to talk about flexible scheduling. We're going to talk about growth opportunities. They're looking for ways to grow. And these are specific slides that we're going to get to in just a moment, but think about what you needed when you were a teenager. What did you want? Well, chances are kids today want the same thing. They're looking for a positive work environment. One of the first jobs I had right out of college, and I know that this is not a teenage work issue, but one of the first jobs I had right out of college was working for a finance company, and I had a boss named Bob Walker. Bob was a Korean War vet. And Bob had what I would consider undiagnosed PTSD. Most days, Bob was the salt of the earth. Bob was the greatest boss you could ever hope for. But you never knew which Bob you were going to get. And on the days when Bob was in a mood, and he made life terrible and he terrorized employees, those were the days when everybody sat at their desk and brushed up on their resumes. Now, the next day could be completely polar opposite. But if we're creating a positive work environment, when we had good Bob, Nobody wanted to go anywhere. We all wanted to retire right there. We wanted Bob to live forever. And at his passing, we wanted to preserve him and enshrine him because he was the best guy in the world. But you've got to create that positive work environment every day. You got to foster a welcome and an inclusive workplace that values even those young contributions. We've got to embrace technology. Yeah, we work with a lot of businesses here who will not complete an online loan application. They will only do a paper application. And when we ask for their email address, they don't have an email address. You've been running a business now for how many years? And you don't even have an email address? Well, maybe you need a Gen Z employee to turn that around, to bring you into the digital age. But embracing technology excites this generation and lets them know that you are willing to grow, that you have something to offer. If I'm a rock layer and I don't have any technology in my business, I'm probably not going to attract tech-savvy younger people. So you get what you give is kind of the message here. We want to make sure that we're embracing that technology and we're showcasing it so that we resonate with these tech-savvy teens. Engage in community outreach. Here in Cherokee, we have community clubs that meet regularly. We have Community Club Council, which is a gathering of all the community clubs periodically, where they get together and talk about larger issues. They can invite people in to talk about issues at one of those council meetings. Talk to tribal council. Go to tribal council. Let them know that you are trying to put together an initiative to work with teenage employees, and you want to work with other small businesses in the area to do the same. And again, you're just doing this in a very public way. You're living out loud, which is exactly what those teenage employees do. You're putting your invitation out there in a very different way. Show up at the school. Show up at career day at the schools. Offer to put on a career day at the school if they don't have one. If you have a Chamber of Commerce, show up at every event. Invite kids to show up at the Chamber of Commerce event just to see what it's like, just to see what businesses are represented. All of those things matter. You can offer some unique perks and benefits to teenagers. You can offer them paid days off to volunteer. We have a few days in our calendar here in Cherokee where we have Elders Day. We have Community Day. We have some things where we're actually, if you're stuck in the office working on those days, you are not normal. You are the outlier. So we get T-shirts. We plan for things that we can go and do on those days. It might just be pulling weeds. It might be pressure washing a driveway or a handicap ramp, something like that. But look, if you're involved in these things and you give these kids pay time off and you let them know that you're going to pay them to go do these volunteering activities, maybe they're going to volunteer at the elder care home or something like that. When they see that as part of their work, it becomes more meaningful to them. And that's the kind of place where teenagers want to be. You might want to consider flexible dress codes. Give them an opportunity to express themselves a little bit, so to speak. And then, again, we're going to talk about some of these more in depth, but maybe some clear career pathways for those kids who want to stick with you and maybe move along that trajectory. One of the things that we can do is we can engage in behavioral interviews with kids. They don't have a lot of experience, and so asking them hypothetical questions is not going to get you very far. Tell me what you would do in this situation. Well, they may never have had to think about that situation. And that can be unsettling because it feels like a gotcha. It feels like you're asking me this question because you don't want me here and you're trying to make me uncomfortable. So let's not ask hypothetical questions. Let's ask relevant questions that are based on their actual experiences. Well, the first thing we do is we set the stage. We give them a comfortable place, a neutral place, maybe even a coffee shop or someplace else that feels like it's neutral turf for them to do an interview. Don't surround them with an entire team. Let that first interview be a one-on-one interview. Help them get comfortable meeting with people and talking with people on a professional level. This is another learning opportunity. You can help them. You can kind of guide them through this interview session as well. But we're going to create the right environment. We're going to start with some light conversation. We're going to help them build a little bit of rapport that kind of puts them at ease. Okay. And then we're going to have a set of relevant questions that meet them where they are. And some of these open-ended questions are going to be things like, oh, here's one of my favorites. Tell me about a time when you had to go above and beyond the call of duty. Or tell me about a time when you went above and beyond what was expected of you. Now, they may have to think a little bit, but this might be that they were told to write a 5-page paper and they wrote a 7-page paper that really dug into the meat of the topic. But again, that's age appropriate. We're not saying that, this person saved the company with a heroic gesture. They wrote an extra 2 pages on a paper. What we're looking for is, what is their idea of above and beyond? Well, my boss told me that I had to be in at work at 5 o'clock, and I always got there at 4:55. Okay, 5 minutes. Is that really going above and beyond, or is that sort of expected? Now, if they showed up at 4:30 and started, watching what are some of the things I'm going to have to do on this shift, then maybe that's a little bit different. Maybe they saved a customer from choking one time, or they saved a cousin from choking. I don't know. But again, we're looking for, what do they believe is above and beyond? What do they see that as? What's their idea? And is this age appropriate? We're going to ask them about, tell me about a time when somebody asked you to do a task that you'd never done before. How did you handle that? Tell us about a time when you got angry, maybe with a close friend or someone in school. Tell us about that time. How did that work out? What did you do about that? How did you feel? We want to ask these questions because, again, it's going to give us some indication of what kind of behavior they're bringing into the workplace. We want to focus in on some key competencies. It says here, you put in the application that you have technology experience. Tell me about your experience with technology. Well, if their experience with technology is that they play Xbox all day, is that really the kind of technology you're looking for? Well, if you're a company that flies drones and they have a lot of experience flying drones and simulators and things, that maybe that is the kind of technology you're looking for. We're going to ask them for details. Don't hesitate to follow up questions with, asking for more. You told me about this. Can you tell me more about that? You gave me an example. Can you really tell me the story behind that example? Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. Most kids are going to be truthful with you. Most kids are just going to tell you, for good or ill, they're going to give you their experiences, and they're going to throw these stories out there. Once in a while, you're going to have somebody who, I'm not going to say is a pathological liar, but you're going to have somebody who thinks, wow, if I tell this story, it's going to make me sound really good and I might get the job. Dig a little bit deeper into that story. Find out if it's true. So you told me this story. What set that off? What set that in motion? Tell me a little bit more about that. Again, we're going to dig deep. Look for some nonverbal clues. Are they nervous? Are they sweating? Are they looking at you, but are their toes pointed toward the door? If their toes are pointed toward the door, that's a pretty good body language indicator that they're looking for an escape route. They want out of there, which means that probably they're not comfortable with you, not comfortable with what they've learned about the job, or they've told you a lie and they're afraid you're going to ask about it and they're going to be caught. Just remember that your interview with them is as much about helping them learn about the organization as you learn about them. Don't make this one-sided. This is not an interrogation. It's an interview where you can tell them about all the cool things that you do that are going to help them be attracted to the job. You're going to tell them about some of the people that you hired, some of the people who work there. These are the kinds of people who work here. Is this the kind of person you tell us about a time when you've had to interact with someone who is like this person I just described. Now you're starting to get somewhere. Now they're learning more about you. You're learning more about them. And if you get to the point where you're ready to make that job offer, look, I said last week, we're going to send a letter, we're going to send an email, because that's the way the world works. You may have students who the only email address they have is their school email address or a community college email address. Around here we have what's called early college. We've got kids as young as 13, 14 getting both a high school diploma and a college degree at the same time. They may only check that email address when they know that there's something coming from the school. So you probably don't want to use that. Is it okay if I text you? Yeah, this is one of those situations where we probably, again, we're going to ease them in. We're going to meet them where they are. We're going to get them up to speed on the way the world works and the way the world communicates out in the world of work. But for now, hey, as we think about our next steps, would it be okay if I text you and let you know what those next steps are? 99 times out of 100, text is probably going to be your go-to, and they're going to be okay with that. You might find that somebody says, well, I don't really have great reception. I don't have great cell service where we are, so I can't text. But I can use Facebook Messenger because I have Wi-Fi at home. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Again, meet them where they are, communicate with them in a way that's meaningful to them. But once you get that student or that teenager who's ready to go, it's time to onboard them. It's time to give them an orientation. Now, look, sometimes we communicate with assumptions. We say things in bits and pieces because we assume that everybody knows what we're talking about. With this generation, we have to be extremely clear. We have to be very explicit, use very clear, unambiguous language. This is your job. This is what you will do. These are your responsibilities. This is what we expect of you. Your shift starts here. We expect you to be in the building ready to start your shift at this time. You have to spell out those things in very, very clear language, but you also want to give them a warm welcome when they come in the door for the first time. Folks, I'm going to stop here for a second and say, jump in the chat and tell me what you believe is the number one question new hires have when they walk into their job on the first day. Take just a second. Give me what you think is the number one question people have at their new job. I see someone typing. Yeah, so what do you think is the number one question people have when they walk into the job on the first day? The number one thing that nobody bothered to tell them. And this is not just for teenagers, by the way. This is pretty universal. Okay, Don says, what will my workday look like for me when I start? Will there be travel required? Okay, these are great questions that most of the time are going to be discussed in the interview, because as an employer, I would say, what kind of questions do you have from me? Now, a teenager is probably not going to have a lot of travel, but they are going to want to know what their schedule is. They are going to want to know what their workday is going to look like. They've never done this before, so they want a picture. But get ready to have your socks blown off here. I'm going to let Benjamin put his answer in before. Yeah, where do you want me to go? I mean, you're all good. You're all close. I'm not going to poo-poo any of these answers. The number one question that people say, why didn't somebody just tell me this? Where's the bathroom? Where's the bathroom? Can you imagine? You're told everything else about this job. But even in the orientation, nobody bothered to tell you where the restroom is. So we've got to think about the little things. We've got to think about the small things. Think about the first time you walked in the door. What did you want to know? These are all things that we're going to have to bring to the orientation. And we need to make sure that they're not just being led around by one person. Let them interact with the entire team. Let them interact with everybody. Give everybody a role to play in this orientation so that they get to meet a lot of people. Maybe you assign somebody to take them to lunch for the first day. Maybe somebody takes them to lunch every day, not the same person, but somebody different takes them to lunch every day for the first week. Or they have someone who kind of ushers them out during one of their breaks, and they sit in the break area and they get to learn about each other and talk during that break time. But it's a structured break. They don't have to know that. They don't have to know that they're getting to know everybody in the organization. But you need to come up with some way to help them get up to speed pretty quickly, so that they kind of get a lay of the land. They understand what's going on and who's there and who does what. Assign them a mentor or a buddy. Put somebody with them to be their shepherd through that whole process, maybe the first week or two. Somebody who can check in with them periodically on a regular basis, get some feedback from them. Hey, how's it going? You okay? Tell me how you're feeling about things. Encourage some of that open communication where they feel comfortable to express themselves and ask questions. And emphasize the company culture and values. If you're just giving away a gift card to the local coffee shop because somebody did something good, that's a feature. That's not really people oriented. If your company's in your team meeting, you're talking about, hey, on Wednesday, we're closing the place down for half a day because we're volunteering at this or that, and we're going out to this event at the school, whatever. When you start including things like that, that lets them know that you're for real. It emphasizes your culture and your values. And look, every company has a culture. Every company has even if you're the only person there and you're hiring your first employee, you have developed a company culture. And by culture, I'm just going to define that as this is the way we do things here. And as your employee base grows, that culture is going to change. So we need to be able to integrate people into that culture very quickly. We want to make sure that we're providing them support and resources. And every day we're saying, okay, here's something else that I'd like for you to read. I'd like for you to know. I'd like for you to understand, to help you do your job better. And then we celebrate some milestones and achievements along the way. Orientation is a process. It's not an event. And so we want to make sure that these young people are, they're walking that path of orientation. And we're celebrating with them. Hey, you learned this. You were able to do this. We cut you loose and let you do this on your own the first time. Congratulations. We're all proud of you. Those are the kinds of things that young people need to hear to help them propel and move forward. Now, hands-on learning, this is important. Kids want to get their hands dirty. They want to do things that are direct, that are important, that have an impact. They want to get in there and do the work. But as an employer, we have to be careful when it comes to hands-on learning. I'm just going to encourage you to go to the OSHA website. I'm going to encourage you to go to the Department of Labor website. And then I'm going to encourage you to go to your tribe's website. And a lot of times the tribe, I know that in Cherokee, the tribe does not have any labor laws or anything governing child labor or even under 18, under 21 labor. That's all relegated to the state laws. So the state takes precedence there. I just encourage you to go look at whatever laws govern your employment of young people and dig deep into that, learn about that, because you don't want a kid running a trash compactor or a cardboard baler or a forklift. And then OSHA walks in on you one day and fines you out of existence. They're going to levy a fine on you so big that you just can't survive. And that's the kind of thing that can happen. Or somebody calls OSHA. It's not that they walk in randomly. Somebody says, hey, I think I saw a 15-year-old driving a forklift. Well, that could be a problem for you. So just remember that there are child labor laws that govern how late a child can work, how many days a kid can work, up to a certain age. And there are thresholds where as they cross that threshold, they get a little bit older, they can work a little bit longer, a little bit later, they can stay out longer on school nights. There are also workplace safety regulations that you need to know to make sure that you don't get in trouble, and that the teenager stays safe. That's the main thing. I didn't say it last because it's less important. I want to encourage that. Listen, I came up in a time where I was doing dangerous things, and lately there's been a lot of pushback from farms that the Department of Labor wanted to regulate how young could a child be and still drive a tractor on a family farm. They've gone back and forth with farmers over this. I mean, I was driving a tractor at probably 8 or 9. Of course, I did a lot of things that we would consider not real smart these days, but I survived. But somebody taught me how to drive that tractor. I was mowing grass at age 10. I had a friend who had a mini bike, and he wanted $50 for it. So I went home and I said, Dad, I need $50 for the mini bike. He said, you don't need $50. You need a job. He said, I've got a lawnmower. I've got rakes. I've got hose. I've got ladders. I've got all kinds of things. Either go clean gutters, go rake leaves, mow grass, do whatever you need to do, make money on your own, but don't ask me for the money. It was one of the best lessons I ever had. That mini bike died after about 3 days. It's probably still laying in the woods out behind our old house. But I realized I could go out and make another $50, and that was powerful. So again, we're looking for what is it that we can legally and safely allow young people to do, and we're going to train them. Just commit to training. Train them until you're blue in the face, but make sure that they're doing it right. Make sure they're doing it safely. You're going to have privacy and confidentiality laws where teenagers are associated. There's something called COPPA or COPA. It's the Child Online Privacy Protection Act. So you can't just say, hey, we've got this ice cream shop. I'm going to take a picture of all my employees back here serving ice cream and put it online. I'm going to tell people who they are. No. You have to protect those young employees. So check out the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. It's going to govern how you can put images and names and information of your young employees out there. You're going to have workers' comp laws that are different for your young employees than they are for your adult employees. You're also going to have parental consent and notification. You're going to have to, if you're going to have children do certain things, you're going to have to ask the parents and get them to sign off on it. You're going to have to make sure that they wear PPE or personal protective equipment. Make sure that if they're on a shop floor or in their allowed environment, they're wearing ear protection. Even if they see older people kind of flouting the rules and not wearing the ear protection or eye protection, it's a good opportunity for you to go to the older employees and say, hey, you should be doing this. I have to make this young person do this. You're going to do this too. Set a good example for them. But also kind of things like emergency preparedness, eye wash stations, electrical lockouts, making sure that kids can't get to doing things that they really shouldn't be messing around with. But the big thing is going to be your child labor laws, making sure that you're not violating any of their work hour rules. So I would just encourage you to dig deeper into that and see, just make sure if you hire teenage employees, you're not going to be digging yourself a hole. Now, an open door policy is a little tricky. I think an open door policy encourages communication. It builds trust and transparency. It lets people know that you're there for them, that they can pop in and ask you a question. It doesn't necessarily mean that your door has to be open all the time. You can have an open door policy from 2 to 4 p.m. that says, during this time, my door's open. You can ask me anything, come in anytime. But in those other times, maybe I'm in deep work and I don't want you just popping in. But with teenage employees, you want to extend that a little bit further to them because they may have an issue that they're confused about. They may have an issue that is presented a moral dilemma to them. You may have presented, at work, they may have an ethical conundrum that they just don't know how to deal with it, or they have an issue with another employee. They don't have the experience to deal with that older employee. They may think that just because a person's been there longer that they are some level of supervisor. I know that there's a great progressive commercial where they're sitting around and they're talking about why isn't Flo. I thought Flo was the supervisor. Well, Flo was the first progressive employee on those commercials. So, yeah, it would be natural to think she's the supervisor. Turns out she's not. But you may have somebody who's trying to exercise authority over a younger employee where it's not warranted. Extend those open door hours a little bit to your younger employees. Make yourself more accessible to them. Because when you do, that's going to support some professional development for them. It's going to let them know the right and wrong way to handle things. And you're going to be able to tell them if you can handle it or if they should handle it. And if they should handle it, here's how you suggest they do it. Look, part of your role as an employer of a teen workforce is to model professional behavior, to model great work ethic, to model excellence, to lead by example, to set clear expectations, to set the bar high. If you wear jeans and a t-shirt to work every day, all of a sudden people are going to start they're going to dress down to your level. Even if you want them wearing a tie, even if you want them wearing maybe a ribbon skirt. Now in Cherokee, we have on Thursdays, everybody's encouraged to wear their ribbon skirts, their ribbon shirts, their trade shirts, their traditional dress to work. And it's fine if you want to set that bar to do that every day. That's fine. But if you just come in wearing old jeans and a kind of a ripped t-shirt because it's comfortable, well, before too long, people are going to come down to that level. It's going to be really hard to tell people, hey, this is not the way you dress at work, because this is the way you dress at work. You have to set the example. You need to provide regular check-ins with them, even if they're not coming by during your open door. You need to go by and open their door. Hey, checking in with you. We haven't talked in a couple of days. How are things going? You got any questions? Tell me about this or that. Ask them some questions to see how things are going. Create that safe and supportive environment for them. Listen, it's going to go a long way to helping them be better employees and to grow with your organization. One of the most difficult things you can do with kids is constructive criticism. Constructive criticism is tough because a lot of times kids are not used to being criticized, or they're used to being over-criticized. The way they get criticized at home is not the way they're going to get criticized in the workplace. You want to make sure that you are not trying to be their parent. I might be able to call my kid or my nephew a knucklehead, but you don't want to do that. That's not your role. I'm not going to do that to an employee. You're not going to do that to an employee. What we're going to do is instead focus on the behavior. We're going to focus on the action, not on the person. Instead of saying, I noticed you're slow at doing this. No. You can say, I noticed that we've given you a standard of this and you're not meeting it. Let's talk about why. Focus on the behavior. We're going to offer them feedback and be encouraging about it. You've probably heard of the encouragement sandwich, where you say, hey, listen, you've done a great job so far. I really think you have a lot of potential here. I did notice that, now here comes the bad stuff. I did notice that you didn't quite finish that project yesterday, and it left it to somebody else who came in after you to have to finish. So let's talk about why that didn't happen and how we can correct that. And then you finish, you put the next piece of bread on that top of that sandwich by saying, I know you can do better. We know you can do this. Show us that you can handle this. So it's good, the bad in the middle, and then the corrective in the middle, and then the positive. But you want to encourage two-way communication with this. You didn't finish that project. Let's talk about why that didn't get finished, why you left that undone. You might find that they got a call that somebody ran over their dog, or they got a call that their grandmother's just been put in the hospital. Okay, now what's the constructive criticism there? Don't hold that back. You need to let people know about that, because we're a team here. So on one hand, you left something for somebody else that made it feel like you didn't want to be part of the team, that you were not a team player, and you left this for somebody else to do. The flip side of that is that we could have come to the rescue. We could have helped you with that. All you have to do is let us know. We're not going to leave you hanging. So that's a learning opportunity for them. And when you can do that, again, you're building trust, you're building longevity, you're building somebody who's going to stay with you for a long time. Now, flexible scheduling. Look, kids have got work, but they've got school too. They've got after school activities. This time of year, think about all the things that a high school student has to deal with. They've got prom. They might have an awards ceremony for sports or academics or both. They've got graduation coming up. They've got graduation rehearsal. They've got all kinds of things that are getting in the way of work right now. You know, at some point you may have had them right after they get out of school till 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night, and you had them every night. Great. But now you don't. You've got to come up with another way of getting things done because they've got conflicts. You can't take those things away from them. That's a very important part of their life. It's an important part of growing up and being in school, being a student. So you want to help them, be encouraging. Hey, we understand you've got graduation. Could we throw a little something for you here at work, and maybe everybody chips in and buys a little gift, a graduation gift. Again, showing that you're committed to their life as well. You want to balance those work and school commitments. You want to promote that work-life balance before they get out into the real world and somebody stomps all over that. Sometimes this means that you have to employ not 1 or 2 teenagers, but you might need to employ 5 or 6 so that you get a rotation, so that you're not just doing without, and that you can keep that schedule filled, but you have to employ enough people so that somebody's there to do the job. Or you have to figure out a way with your non-teenager employees. How do you fill in those gaps? Maybe you extend work schedules, maybe you pay a little overtime, maybe you schedule people at different hours than they're normally working. But again, this is part of helping out the team. This is gonna attract a diverse talent because you're gonna have kids who, look, for some kids, school is it. That's their world. For some kids, it's athletics. For other kids, it's work. But you have another group of kids that enjoy a little bit of everything. They play sports. They like to work. They also are in the school band. They like to work. They like to do the school musical at the end of the year, but they like to work and they study hard. They get straight A's. They want to go to college. All of these things, if you can be a little bit flexible in scheduling, again, you're going to attract a very diverse talent pool that's going to benefit you greatly. Mentorship. This is a big one. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because this is a program in itself, but one of these things that you can do is we talked a little bit about the buddy system, but in mentorship, just because somebody has been there for a long time and does their job really well, it does not necessarily mean they're going to be a good mentor. You want to look for somebody who has some structure to their world, somebody who has a level head, somebody who has a patience, maybe somebody who has a connection to your team employees. And you want to match these people up. You want them to have an opportunity to grow and learn. But you also want somebody who's going to be able to set clear expectations, hold their feet to the fire, make sure they're performing, and challenge them to do better and better things every day. Somebody who's going to be able to celebrate with them, but also somebody who is going to be able to push them to continually improve and evolve as an employee. Again, just because they're great at what they do does not mean they're cut out to be a mentor. You might have a very middle of the road performer who would make an excellent mentor. Remember, their first job is not their next job. It's not their last job. If we're providing comprehensive training, give them a wide variety of things to do. Let them experience everything. Don't just put them in a box and say, do this one thing and this is all we ever need you to do. You know, if they're bagging groceries, let them work in the deli a little bit. Let them work in the produce department a little bit. Let them do the things that they can do, spread out that knowledge a little bit and get those experiences. Encourage skill development. Hey, there's a great training program coming up at the community college that I think it would be really worth it for you to go. It's 2 hours on Saturday morning. What if we paid you to do that instead of you coming in and working a shift? You're going to build those skills. It's going to make them better. Offer them mentorship and guidance. Help them set a path. Look, you know people within the tribal government. You know people in business in town. You know other people. And sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. If you see an opportunity that's going to help this young person be happier, do better, grow more, don't be afraid to fire them. Now, maybe firing is too strong a word. Let's not fire them. Help them move to that next transition. Help them move to that next place where they're going to be better off and they're going to get a better experience. Free up their schedule so that they can go work for the person down the street who's going to help them get that next job and that next job and that next job. If we are providing them real world exposure to real world challenges, real world situations, and we're giving them transferable skills, we are setting them up to be great employees down the line. We got to realize their digital literacy gaps, that what they know is not all they can know. We got to prepare them for the world of work. Let's help them explore different career paths. Let's help them expand beyond what we have for them to do. Let's help them grow professionally, learn how to talk to people, act around people, interact with people, and work with people. And yeah, it's not the last one on the list, but it's the last one I want to mention. By and large, kids today do not get great financial models at home. They don't get any financial education at school to speak of. If you have an opportunity to help these kids learn how to manage that first paycheck and handle a checking account and be responsible with that money, you are setting them on a path for success that's going to last for generations. So you are more than a boss. You're a model, you're a coach, you're a teacher. And if you do all those things well, your organization will benefit, your community will benefit, your tribe will benefit. Folks, you could have spent the last hour and a half doing almost anything, and I'm really honored that you would spend it with me. One of the deals that I make with the Native Learning Center and with anybody I do a webinar for is if you ever have any questions, you want to contact me, connect with me, and I know a couple already have from our last week's webinar. If you just want to reach out to me, ask me any questions, I'm an open book, always willing to help. At this point, I'm going to wish you a good rest of your day. I'm going to hand it back over to Awista.
Thank you very much, Russ. That was an incredible webinar and many helpful tips. I'm going to go ahead and launch the survey for today. It is anonymous, so please go ahead and take the time to fill it out. Russ does read them, and he does appreciate every comment. It just lets him know what you would like to see on the next webinar, and anything or any questions you have, he can answer them on the next one. Our next webinar is going to be May 2nd. It's going to be Setting Priorities and Delegating Duties to Your Tribal Department Staff, Part 2, presented by Lisa Perez. As always, registration is free. It'll be at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific, and 10 a.m. Alaska time. You can access this recording and any of our other recordings on our website at www.nativelearningcenter.com, and you can find those under the Recorded Cathedra Webinar tab. You can find all of our recordings up to 2 years. If there's a specific recording that you're looking for, please let me know, and I'd be more than happy to help you find it. Check out our upcoming events on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We also have a podcast called Hope a Thing, a Native American Podcast, and you can find that on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Simplecast, and Pandora. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Thank you again, Russ.
Thanks, Awista. Have a good one.